Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Just as we started to record this episode of Cut the Clutter, news came which looks like good news to begin with. We don't know enough right now to do a full episode of Cut the Clutter on it, but we can't not take notice of it up front. So the news is you will see a statement from the Chinese government. In fact, that came first. What it means is the news is that India and China have started the process of disengagement along the eastern Ladakh frontier, where we've had a lot of tension. So what is happening in the first step, and see the map so you understand, although by now you've seen, heard, followed this so closely that all of you know the geography of eastern Ladakh. Pangong Tso, all of us know, the Chinese had done some mischief on the north bank, far bank of Pangong Tso. They had come from finger 8 to about finger 4. In retaliation, India had gone up to Kailash range in dominating positions on the southern bank of the same lake. In fact, it is not something that so far we would have liked to say, but the fact is that at least in the Pangong Tso area, between the north bank and the south bank, India has been able to even the scores with the Chinese PLA. So if they've done something on the north, we have done something on the south. What has happened today is that the two sides, first of all, are fully withdrawing not all their forces from the southern bank, but their armored forces, armored columns. That means tanks and what is called as, in old-fashioned way, APCs, armored personnel carriers, but today increasingly these are called ICVs or infantry combat vehicles. These are also armored vehicles, and you've seen pictures of those, you've seen satellite pictures of those. This was quite a bit of bandobast because this area provides you also a fair bit of plain ground for armored warfare and mobile warfare. So this is a big de-escalation, that is armored forces are being withdrawn. Although I must say, so far the two sides had maintained quite a bit of restraint. These tanks were very close to each other. In fact, opposing tanks were less than a few hundred meters apart, but even then precautions like reversing their barrels, etc., had been taken so that by mistake a firefight does not start. But we will see how this picture unrolls as this goes along, but it looks like this is the beginning of good news in that area. Early days, but this is a positive move. As we know more about it, we will talk more about it, maybe do a full episode of Cut the Clutter, probably tomorrow. This one I will stop at this point, so follow this story. Now what we'll talk about today and what we had prepared to talk about is also something to do with China. And this is to do with the Uyghur problem in China's Xinjiang, which is not far from this area of action. This area of action is along Aksai Chin. Abutting Aksai Chin is Xinjiang. In fact, if you go right up to Daulat Beg Oldi and then Karakoram Pass, that is where Xinjiang begins. So if you look at the full map of India, that is including what is POK, you will see that India has a border with Xinjiang. And the crucial thing for China with Aksai Chin is that they built their big highway linking Tibet with Xinjiang. And these two states are the soft underbelly of China in the northwest of the big Chinese landmass. Now what's happened in Xinjiang is, we did a Cut the Clutter episode earlier, and I will share that with you with today's description. In Xinjiang, a Muslim minority lives. The majority of the population, the large majority, is Uyghurs. It's an ethnicity called Uyghurs, and Uyghurs are almost entirely Muslim. That is 11 million people, or 1.1 crore people, almost all Muslims living in that area. And they've been subjected to a great deal of ethnic cleansing, genocide, whatever you may call it, all the effort to Sinicize them as the Chinese had done in Tibet, that is giving people Han Chinese names, making them forget their own culture, etc., etc. There's been a lot of protest about this from Western countries and many other liberal institutions from across the world, as we know that recently Trump administration made very strong statements about the Uyghur situation, and so did the Biden administration immediately as it came to power. So that is one thing that is truly bipartisan in American or Western politics. That is the revulsion over the Chinese treatment of Uyghurs. So I would say that in America, this is one of the few things which have complete bipartisanship, the other being the relationship with India, which is what matters to us. I'm sure there are other things, but that matters. Now, what's happened with the Uyghur story is that the Guardian and the BBC, they have come up with some new exposes on the Uyghur situation. And these exposes have come through people who have escaped Xinjiang and who are now giving first person accounts. So the most important of these is a woman, is a 42-year-old woman called Turusne Ziavuddin. Turusne Ziavuddin married a Kazakh and was living in Kazakhstan, which has a border, long border with Xinjiang. She married a Kazakh. From 2011, she had been living in Kazakhstan. In 2016, she and her husband came back to Xinjiang. As they returned, they were detained at the airport and interrogated, and their passports were taken away. Her husband was allowed to go, passport taken away, but she was taken to a detention camp. She spent a month in that detention camp, and she says this wasn't too bad. All that she was made to suffer is Chinese propaganda. So she was made to watch Chinese propaganda films all day, and also given that kind of quote unquote education to sinicize her. After a month, they let her go. But that did not last long enough, because by 2018, the Chinese pressure on Uyghurs had grown. So the Chinese came and picked her up and put her back in a detention camp. From there, she was released after a year, about a year, and escaped to Kazakhstan, probably to be with her husband. But even then didn't feel safe enough in Kazakhstan to talk about what had happened, because she thought she might be extradited to China. So now that she's come to America, she feels secure enough to talk about this. So there's a long conversation that she's had with The Guardian. The BBC has a story as well, and this has led to a series of stories. There is another story also, because one of the guards from one of these camps has also escaped, and he's also talked about his experiences. Now, all the media institutions which have talked about this tell you that they can't corroborate everything they say, but they are saying that they have the documentation they have seen. In case of Turusne Ziavuddin, her immigration dates and records, her passport and some other stuff, and similarly for the guard, his employment papers at the institution or as the detention center, they confirm that they are at least genuine people. They were there. Beyond that, it is these people's version. Now, what is Turusne Ziavuddin saying? Because that is the most striking testimony. She says that she saw that every evening Chinese men would come. They were wearing suits and they were wearing masks. And this is before coronavirus started. They would always wear masks and they will wear suits, not uniforms. And they will select a bunch of women and take them away with them to what was called black rooms. And it was in those rooms that they were then gang raped by them and then sent back. And she says, exact quote from her, "Perhaps this is the most forgettable scar on me forever. I don't want these words to escape from my mouth." So she says that she also was subjected to the same treatment. We'll come to some detail. She said she was tortured and gang raped on 3 occasions, each time by 2 or 3 men. Then she said that many of the women were removed and raped every night. That was using sexual violence as a tactics to dehumanize them and also to de-Uygurize them and say that this is the price for being Uyghur. Then she goes on to tell you about her second detention, how it started. She said as she came into her second detention, she found that among the women there, and she said by this time it was the same detention center where she had been kept in 2016. By this time the detention center had become much bigger. There was a row of buses outside disgorging women because they were collecting these, picking these up and bringing them here. Among these, she said she found a much older woman who was wearing a traditional Uyghur gown kind of a dress, a one-piece dress, and also had a scarf on. So the Chinese guards insisted immediately that she take her scarf off, and when she did not do that, yanked her scarf off, and also then undressed her, took off her gown saying you are not supposed to wear this, and left her in her underwear. Very disturbing testimony this is. Then there is another case of a Kazakh woman whose job in Xinjiang at these camps was to strip these women, put handcuffs around their wrists, and to leave them to the Chinese men and later clean up these rooms. So that is a kind of a corroborating testimony. Now, many experts have been quoted based on this, saying that this confirms the case of genocide against Chinese authorities in Uyghur areas. So, Turusne Ziauddin also describes how she was brought into the detention center the second time, that was 9th of March 2018. She said the authorities told her that she needed more education, but as she came in, they took everybody's jewelry off, they yanked her jewelry off also, and also physically, forcibly yanked the earrings off her ears, causing injuries to both her ears. She said all the women were told, one, no jewelry, second, not to wear any clothes that had buttons or elastic onto them. Everybody had their hair cut short, and then they had to all day listen to propaganda movies or watch propaganda movies on their mobile phones. Then she said one day she was beaten up and she was kicked in her belly and she started to bleed. When she complained to the other inmates and to the jail guards, they said doesn't matter, it is normal for women to bleed. This is her version. Then she describes where she stayed. She said these were like cell blocks. In each cell there were 14 women staying. They were sleeping on bunk beds, and there was a toilet by way of a hole in the ground, and that is what they were using. So based on this, the BBC quotes Charles Patton, who is a former British diplomat and now a senior fellow at Royal United Services Institution, RUSI, that this makes a credible case of genocide and systemic human rights violations in the Uyghur areas by the Chinese authorities. Obviously, the Chinese embassy has reacted very sharply to these reports. The Chinese embassies have said the lies of the century have been fabricated against their country by Western media. Now, while this is going on, something else has happened also in Britain, which will have impact on public opinion in the Western world. So a bunch of human rights organizations, that is Global Legal Action Aid Network, World Uyghur Congress, and Uyghur Human Rights Project, they commissioned a British law firm to look at all the data and evidence coming out of Xinjiang to see if it makes out a case for genocide or not. Now, what this story tells us, the BBC story tells us quite clearly, is that they commissioned this study, but they did not pay for this study. But this was a study commissioned by them, so we should know that. Now, this is a group of senior barristers at Essex Court Chambers. They have done this report led by a well-known lawyer called Alison MacDonald, Queen's Counsel, QC. Now, what they have done is, in the formal legal assessment, the first thing they say is that the measures to prevent births within a group or mass forced sterilizations amount to genocide. Second, they say forcible mass transfer of children from one group to another also amounts to genocide. And they say there is sufficient evidence that this is being done with Uyghur babies, Uyghur children in Xinjiang. Then they go on to say that there is sufficient evidence to make out a case of genocide +++ against Xi Jinping and two more officials, a guy called Zhu Hailun, who is Deputy Secretary of Xinjiang People's Congress, that is Communist Party there, and also Chen Guangguo, who is the party secretary with Communist Party in Beijing. So that is a strong judgment or strong assessment from this group. Then they go on to say, this lawyers group, the evidence reviewed above suggests the close involvement of Xi Jinping, Chen Guangguo, and Zhu Hailun. And they go on to say that there is evidence of targeting of Uyghurs with a severity and to the extent that we could infer an intent to destroy the group as such, which means it's a case of genocide. Now let's look at a few things that have happened alongside to put these findings in perspective. Mike Pompeo, as he was going out as Secretary of State, made very strong statements criticizing China for their treatment of the Uyghurs. That is something that Antony Blinken, the new Secretary of State, also fully backed in his congressional hearings for his confirmation. In fact, one of his first statements, public remarks after becoming Secretary of State was about quote unquote genocide against Uyghurs. Similarly, Joe Biden himself has spoken about it, and you can see that the British government has sort of broken rank. Not only have they had Brexit, but they've broken rank with Europe on their response to China. So this makes it sound like the Chinese problems coming out of Xinjiang or their treatment of Uyghurs are now getting a little more complicated. So I will conclude today on this note. I know that you are curious about what's happening in Ladakh, but let something happen, let more come out. We'll talk about that hopefully tomorrow.